Hello, I'll be explaining about how the Great Leap Forward in China from 1958 to 1962 was one of the greatest failures in policy directed towards the environment in the history of the world. So, if you don't know about this, it took place in China. It was a period under the leadership of Mao Zedong when China's goal was to greatly increase their industrialization, specifically to match countries like England, and they wanted to make sure that they were producing a lot of steel. One of the goals, specifically from Mao Zedong, was to, in 15 years, produce as much steel as England. But before that 15 years ended, he decided that they wanted to do that even sooner and moved up that date. So you probably are wondering why this is such a failure for the environment. That's because, for one, the production of steel is extremely bad for the environment and produces a lot of CO2. So in their goal to produce more steel, they were also greatly increasing the CO2 in the environment. CO2 is bad, one, because it raises the temperature. It is also very bad for the soil, which explains partly why they had such an issue with growing food. So about 16 to 50 million people died during this period, but the more accurate estimates are probably between 40 and 50 million, which would be one of the greatest death tolls for any event in history. And while these weren't direct deaths, like the country's goal, Mao Zedong's goal wasn't to have everyone die. It happened because of their misdirection in policy and their inability to properly grow resources. What they did was they created these communes where, instead of having individual farmers growing and everyone really doing their own job that they really know how to do, they had these communes where everyone was like farming and doing basically what the government directed them to do, which has been shown to not really work before this and hasn't been proven to work really since. So what happened was they really struggled to grow. They had these food halls where everyone would be eating, and it was unlimited food basically. But once the storage ran out, you couldn't get more food. This was also made worse by weather. It is true that the weather during this time wasn't good for growing, which caused issues that weren't really the government's fault. Another issue was the Four Pest campaign. The government thought that for some reason sparrows were really destroying the crops, which they do partly eat some of the crops, but much less than the mosquitoes that the sparrows were eating. And so with the sparrow population decreasing, the mosquito population greatly increased, and this caused many crops to be eaten. So a combination of mismanagement of the soil, the mismanagement of policy regarding animals and the ecosystem, the weather, which was not good for growing crops, led to really this issue of nobody having food. Not only that, when they were heating these furnaces for the steel, they were cutting down forests and using wood, which decreased the amount of oxygen produced and also just harmed the environment. That was a mismanagement of policy. Part of the reason they were mismanaging policy is because they were very focused on industrialization, and also they didn't have really research, or they didn't care about the environment at this time. But there also wasn't a lot of research explaining the effects on the environment. And due to this, it's like all their policies together just made it so that the food basically ran out. People could not eat. And that's why this is such a failure in policy. And it had a really greatly negative effect on the people. Thank you.